So what's going on, guys? I am Black Ops Amazing. Welcome back to another video. Welcome back to another Zombies Q&A on the channel, the series where I take your questions from the comment section below to do the zombie storyline, Easter eggs, and I answer them. We're going to get straight into it today, where the first question is from Imin Future. And by the way, if there's any questions you want to ask me, just leave them in the comment section below and they may be featured in a future video. So this person says, "Hey BOA, who shoots down the helicopter in Cold War, and weren't there more than one Richtofen? What happened to the rest?" So there are two questions you're asking here. The first one, who shoots down the helicopters in Cold War? I'm assuming you're talking about when you exfil. What I've done is gone into each of our 3 zombies maps, D Machine, Firebase C, and Outbreak. I guess that's a mode, not a map. And I've recorded each exfil so you can listen what's said, where in most cases it's revealed who shoots down the helicopters.
30 seconds, strike team. Enemy missiles targeting our position. Mayday! Mayday! Raptor 1 is going down!
As you just heard in the first one, I think it's the Soviets who shoot down the helicopter in D Machine. Where they would be to shoot this down, because they're nowhere near this facility. I'm unsure, maybe they're a couple of miles away. Are they just hiding in the forest? We don't know where the missile comes from. And then as for the other 2 maps, Firebase C and Outbreak, well, take a listen.
I'm at the LZ, people. Get your ass on board before Omega locks onto this bird. Omega missile lock on in 30 seconds. Get in, people.
Ready in combat
Get a move
zone.
on. Omega forces are tracking us. Need the extraction zone clear before we can evac.
As you just heard, for both of them, we are told it is Omega that is locking onto the helicopter, and it's them that shoots it down. And it makes perfect sense. Firebase C is an Omega outpost, Dr. Pecker's there, and then eventually in the end when you complete the Easter egg, Omega come and extract him from the facility, so they must be nearby, or if they're not, since this base belonged to them, maybe there's anti-aircraft weapons close, and it's the same for Outbreak. Omega shoot down the helicopter, this was a place where they operated, so either they're close, or it's an anti-aircraft weapon. And to answer part 2 of your question where you said, weren't there more than one Richtofen? What happened to the rest? Well, yes, there was. There were many Richtofens, just to name a few: Primus, Ultimus, Great War Richtofen, the ones that existed in each and every different universe, but they would have all been killed with the purging of the universe. At the end of Kino Der Toten, each and every dimension that existed was destroyed, leaving us with just one dimension, the Cold War one. So each and every other version of Richtofen, Tachyo, Nikolai and Dempsey would have been destroyed along with the universe they existed in. All of the different versions of them were bound together. The next question of the day from Prince of Crime Joker says, "Hey Black Ops Amazing, I have a question. So what happened to Element 115? The only reason I asked this is because the ray gun was powered by 115. What happened to it, and did it change to the new crystals?" Okay, this is an interesting question. Aetherium is something newly introduced to the zombie storyline, so we are still learning about it. We don't know everything. We don't completely know how it formed. Does it have a link to 115? It does seem like Aetherium is kind of the new version of Element 115, but at the same time it isn't. In our original zombie story from World at War to Black Ops 4, 115 was the thing that created the undead, but it was also a lot more than that. It was the fabric that held everything together. It was the webbing of every universe. It was Dr. Maxis who told us in Alpha Omega, the moment Element 115 came into contact with Earth, that was the moment we were doomed. The only way to halt the unraveling of space and time was to purge Element 115 from existence before it ever encountered humanity. It was inexplicitly linked to our Primus and Ultimus characters. It was a shard of 115 that bound their souls together. So it was a lot more than something that just created the undead, something that gave you side effects such as memory loss, delusion, paranoia. It was the fabric of the universe. And at the end of Kino Der Toten, all of that was destroyed.
When we are gone, so too is everything that spewed forth from the ether. Element 115, the Apothecons, even Monty himself, all of it will be banished to where it belongs. The dark ether.
As you just heard Nikolai say in the ending cutscene, once they destroyed the summoning key, which was created in the beginning to mix all of the dimensions with life, it was even used to bridge dimensions together. So when it was destroyed, everything that spewed forth from the ether was banished to the dark ether. This included Element 115, the Apothecons, even Dr. Monty herself. As we know, even characters such as Victus. Everything besides from Primus and Ultimus, who were dead at the end of Tag, was banished to the dark ether, including 115. And that was where everything ended. From then on, only 2 things existed: one singular universe, which was the Cold War one, and the Dark Ether. And inside of the Dark Ether was Element 115. The Dark Ether is involved in Cold War zombies. People have been inside of it and seen what it holds, but we haven't heard mention of 115. It doesn't seem to be a part of our new zombie storyline, and what replaces it is Aetherium, otherwise known as Exo-Element 1 or Vogelium. In many ways it works like 115 did, but in other ways it didn't. We don't know everything about it, but there is a radio we can find from Dr. Strauss where he says this.
Aetherium has proven to be fascinating in both its gaseous and solid crystalline states. It appears the infected and dark ether creatures require it for their very survival, not unlike oxygen in our own reality. We've observed that the farther you are from a breach, the less exposure you risk. If Aetherium is their oxygen, this explains why they are restricted to these outbreak zones.
So he tells us the creatures of the dark ether, whether it be monsters such as the mimics, Order, the Manglers, the Megatons, or the Undead, everything in the dark ether needs Aetherium to survive. It's like their oxygen. This explains why there isn't just one outbreak zone and then the zombies spread out and infect the whole world. Instead we have multiple outbreak zones, because if the zombies stray too far from it, if they wander off too far away from where the Aetherium is, since it's their oxygen, they will die. That isn't how Element 115 worked. Element 115 existed inside of the undead, so they didn't need to stay close to its source to survive. Also, we haven't heard of any side effects. 115 made you suffer from delusion, paranoia. There are people that have come into contact with Aetherium, but as far as I'm aware, haven't suffered any of those side effects. It is the dark ether what turns people into the undead, not Aetherium itself. So the big question is, did Aetherium evolve from Element 115? What happened to the original element? Is it still in the dark ether? Did it magically vanish? Or over time, did it change into these Aetherium crystals? It's something we will learn more about as we go on. People such as Straub, Carver, Dr. Grey, they each have their own agendas with it, so I'm guessing over the next few maps we'll find out more. The next question, which is from Nate, says, a long time ago you did a video of a concept of what Origins should have looked like. Are there any more like that? So if you don't know what he's on about, I will link that video down in the description. As with most, well actually all of our zombies maps, of course when you're creating a map, you have to come up with a concept first. You've got to do drawings of what you want it to look like in game, and sometimes what Treyarch have done, or some of the concept artists that have worked at Treyarch, they've released what their concept art for that map was. So for Origins, the person who came up with the concept for that map, who came up with the idea of what it should look like, a few years after Origins came out, they released and showed the public that artwork. This gives us a good idea of what they thought the map should have looked like, maybe a few months before it actually got made, and we can compare that to what the final version looks like. It's just really interesting to take a look at the concept artist's vision and see how close it was to the final version. This wasn't only done for Origins, but there was also concept art released for Kino Der Toten. Now Kino came out in 2010, but the concept arts for this map was released I think a couple of years after, in 2012, about the time of BO2, so it was a few years later after Kino came out where these images were finally released. If you want to check them out for yourself, I will link them down in the description. These were drawn up by Liam Herr, who was a concept artist for Call of Duty, but yeah, let's take a look at these. So there are 7 in total. This is the first one, and I'll do a comparison of what this area looks like in game. You can recognize it straight away, but the major difference is there are cobwebs absolutely everywhere. The building looks quite a bit more run down than it does in game. There is glass all over the floor, water. In my opinion, it's got more of a darker tone to it. There's not as much colour as there is in the final version. Other than that though, the layout is pretty familiar. I think the major difference here is just the cobwebs. Then we've got this one. I think this looks drastically different from this area in game. In fact, I'm even questioning if this is the same place. But again, I really like how this concept is. I think I prefer it to the final version in game. Next up we have this area. One thing you will notice on these concepts is there's no perk machines anywhere. There is usually a perk in this room. It could be that this concept was drawn up so early on, they weren't sure where the perk machines were going to be placed or what perk machines would be in the game. Remember that Kino was a base map alongside 5, but the layout is the same. The colour scheme is kind of different, there are yellow lights everywhere. Next up we have the main theatre. Now this is cool, we have the screen in the background which is on. Also at the front here, I can't tell if this is either a zombie, which is crawling, or a Nova 6 crawler. If this is a Nova 6 crawler, its face is drastically different. It looks more like just a crawling zombie. And the theatre, especially the chairs in this, doesn't look as trashed and run down as it is in game, but you can tell by the ceiling, the place has still been abandoned for a long time. We then have this area which is massively different. I think this is the biggest change out of the bunch. The noticeable thing being this rooftop area. In game it doesn't go all of the way across. The zombies actually jump down from there. It's a lot shorter and smaller than it is in game, so it's interesting to see what this area could have been like. I'm unsure why they decided not to go with this version. And then we have this one, the starting room, but here you will notice there is no teleporter pad. It could just be that this is a really early concept and they didn't think of it then. Perhaps the teleporters originally weren't intended to be added on Kino and was something for 5, because that was a massive part of 5. But yeah, that is a comparison of what Kino should have looked like from the concept art and how it actually turned out in game. In a lot of cases it is relatively similar, but in some cases it isn't. Anyway guys, there we go, that is it. That is all I have for you for today's video. As always, hopefully you have enjoyed. If you have, you know what to do. Drop me a like rating, make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest videos on the channel. Leave your questions down below and I will see you in the next video. Until then, goodbye.